Anorexia is a common symptom of disease that's defined as a loss of appetite. It's problematic because it results in a decreased ability to eat, which can lead to unintentional weight loss, poor wound healing, a decreased ability to fight infection, a lower quality of life, and vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Since telling a patient who's experiencing anorexia to eat more is an ineffective strategy, clinicians are often tasked with trying more sophisticated interventions. One such intervention is an appetite-stimulating medication. Even though prescribing medication is beyond the scope of practice for a registered dietitian, as leaders in the fight against malnutrition, being aware of the available options is imperative. This video is going to highlight 3 popular appetite stimulants and answer the question, is it appropriate to push for patients to receive them? The 3 appetite stimulants that I'm going to cover are Megestrol acetate, Dronabinol, and Mirtazapine. You may know them as the brand names Megestrol and Remeron. Megestrol acetate and Dronabinol received FDA approval to be used as appetite stimulants for patients with HIV/AIDS-induced anorexia and weight loss in 1993 and 1985 respectively. Mirtazapine received FDA approval to be used for the treatment of major depressive disorder in adults in 1996. Giving it as an appetite stimulant is an off-label use, which the FDA permits if a healthcare provider decides it's medically appropriate for their patient. Broadly speaking, research on these medications for appetite stimulation is centered around patients in the outpatient and long-term care settings. There are a few studies that have investigated use in the acute care setting, but the amount of literature is limited. In terms of patient population, the disease states that have received the most attention are HIV/AIDS and cancer. Nevertheless, there have also been studies in patients with depression, Alzheimer's disease, anorexia nervosa, chronic kidney disease, and cystic fibrosis, as well as in more general populations like nursing home residents and patients receiving palliative care. A major focus has been put on changes to subjective measurements of appetite. Simply put, patients get started on an appetite stimulant or a placebo, and then over the course of weeks or months, they answer questions about how hungry they feel. Other relevant outcomes that have been examined are changes to the quality of life, changes to the percent of meals consumed, changes to body weight, and any adverse effects that occur. Overall, I'd say the current body of literature suggests appetite stimulants are minimally effective at improving appetite and outcomes for patients suffering from anorexia or cachexia. In the upcoming sections, I'll outline the mechanism of action and introduce relevant publications for each of the 3 medications I've mentioned. But first, I want to point out that based on my own investigation, there isn't a single major medical, pharmaceutical, or nutrition organization that endorses the use of appetite stimulants. The only official publications I've encountered that even address them are the Choosing Wisely campaign and the Beers criteria for potentially inappropriate medication use in older adults from the American Geriatric Society, and a paper on nutrition and dementia from the European Society for Clinical Nutrition and Metabolism. The American Geriatric Society's position is that healthcare providers should avoid using prescription appetite stimulants in older adults, especially Megestrol acetate. Similarly, the European Society for Clinical Nutrition and Metabolism doesn't recommend the systematic use of appetite stimulants in patients with dementia. Unfortunately, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics doesn't have a position paper on this topic. There's a space for it in the Evidence Analysis Library that says the registered dietitian should collaborate with other healthcare professionals to consider appetite stimulants. Yet it also says that there is no research on the effectiveness of appetite stimulants for older adults that meets the American Dietetic Association criteria for evidence analysis. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also get access to a written companion piece for this video by clicking the link in the video description. The companion piece is a PDF that contains a written version of the information, a list of key points, and a list of references with links to all of the articles and books that were used. Now that I've looked at a general overview of appetite stimulants, I want to dive a bit deeper into each one by reviewing the mechanism of action and introducing some relevant publications on their efficacy. After that, I'm going to quickly go over the evidence for their use in the acute care setting, and then I'll finish with a few takeaways that can be applied to practice. The first medication I'm going to discuss is Megestrol acetate, which you may recognize under the brand name Megestrol. It's a synthetic derivative of the hormone progesterone. The mechanism of action for appetite stimulation isn't fully understood, but there are a few hypotheses. It may inhibit the production of cytokines like interleukin-1, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor that are produced as part of the inflammatory response to disease and are believed to exert an anorexic effect. It may also increase levels of neuropeptide Y, which stimulates the desire to eat, and decrease levels of serotonin, which reduces the desire to eat. Perhaps the best example of research on the efficacy of Megestrol acetate is a series of 2 systematic reviews by Ruiz Garcia et al. They were published in 2013 and 2018, and both focused on randomized controlled trials that explored the role of Megestrol acetate in the treatment of what the authors called anorexia cachexia syndrome. Looking at the 2018 edition, most of the studies were in patients with HIV/AIDS or cancer, and had a follow-up period of about 56 to 84 days. The authors found that patients treated with Megestrol acetate gained an average of 2.25 kilograms more than with a placebo, but didn't experience an improvement in their quality of life. They concluded that Megestrol acetate can have a small effect on weight gain, but the amount isn't clinically significant. In other words, the medication works, but the degree to which it works probably isn't profound enough to make a meaningful difference for a patient in the course of their disease. These findings were consistent with the major findings in the author's paper from 2013. One difference is that in 2013, they found Megestrol acetate use was associated with an increased risk of blood clots, fluid retention, and death. The increased risk of blood clots and death is part of the rationale given by the American Geriatric Society when they recommended against using it in the Beers criteria for potentially inappropriate medication use in older adults. Other adverse effects that appear in the literature include impotence for males, adrenal insufficiency, gastrointestinal distress, headache, skin changes like acne and hirsutism, and hyperglycemia. The second medication I'm going to discuss is Dronabinol, which you may recognize under the brand name Marinol. It's a synthetic form of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or delta-9 THC, which is the main psychoactive component in marijuana. As mentioned previously, it received FDA approval for appetite stimulation in 1985 for patients with HIV/AIDS-induced anorexia and weight loss. I'll now add that it also received FDA approval to treat nausea and vomiting in patients with cancer on chemotherapy whose symptoms don't improve with conventional antiemetic treatments. Dronabinol is supposed to assist in the management of anorexia, nausea, and vomiting, primarily through its effect on the central nervous system via the endocannabinoid system. In short, the endocannabinoid system features endogenously produced cannabinoids that bind to receptors in the brain and influence activities throughout the body. Dronabinol is an exogenously administered cannabinoid that can bind to the receptors and produce reversible effects on appetite, cognition, memory, mood, and the perception of pain. Most of the research on dronabinol has revolved around patients with cancer-associated cachexia. A 2022 systematic review and meta-analysis by Simon et al. Explored the effect of dronabinol on changes to appetite, body weight, and quality of life in this population, as well as the risk of adverse effects and mortality. They found dronabinol had no effect on any of those outcomes. They concluded that no recommendations can be made to support the use of cannabinoids alone to improve symptoms and outcomes in patients with cancer-associated cachexia. These findings align with a 2018 systematic review and meta-analysis by Muke et al. This one looked at the use of dronabinol in patients with cancer, HIV, and dementia who were receiving palliative care. Finally, in a double-blind, randomized controlled trial by Jatoy et al., researchers compared the effect of dronabinol and Megestrol acetate on appetite in patients with cancer-associated cachexia. Participants were randomized to receive Megestrol acetate plus placebo, dronabinol plus placebo, or a combination of Megestrol acetate plus dronabinol. After staying on the intervention for an average of 80 days, 57 days, and 74 days respectively, they found Megestrol acetate was superior to dronabinol for appetite stimulation. They also found that taking a combination of both medications offered no additional benefit. In summary, the available evidence doesn't suggest dronabinol is useful for stimulating appetite and promoting weight gain in patients who are dealing with a chronic disease. Major concerns with its use are related to effects on the central nervous system and cardiovascular system. Patients can develop dizziness, lightheadedness, confusion, and sleepiness, all of which raise the concern for having poor judgment and thus increase the risk for critical events like falls, choking, and aspiration. The tablets also contain sesame oil and shouldn't be administered if there's a known hypersensitivity. The last medication we're going to look at is Mirtazapine, which you may recognize under the brand name Remeron. It's an antidepressant that belongs to a subclass called tetracyclic antidepressants. It was initially identified as a possible appetite stimulant after an increase in appetite and body weight were reported as side effects when it was used to treat depression. The mechanism of action for these side effects isn't entirely clear, but it's believed to be related to it serving as an antagonist to brain receptors for serotonin and histamine. Much of the research on the efficacy of Mirtazapine as an appetite stimulant is from the trials for depression that reported it as a side effect. One example is a 2014 systematic review and meta-analysis by Watanabe et al. That set out to determine the efficacy of Mirtazapine compared to other antidepressants. Using data from 29 randomized controlled trials, they found Mirtazapine was more likely to cause weight gain or an increase in appetite than serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are the most frequently used subclass of antidepressants. As a result, for patients dealing with depression and anorexia and/or weight loss, clinicians may consider Mirtazapine as an option to treat both at the same time. What's missing from this type of research is the application to clinical populations without depression, and this is an area that requires further exploration. The only randomized controlled trial in patients without depression that I'm aware of was published in 2021 by Hunter et al. They took 120 patients with advanced cancer, anorexia, cachexia, and no depression, and gave them 15 milligrams of Mirtazapine per day or a placebo. After 8 weeks, they found that the subjective appetite score increased in both arms of the study, but there was no significant difference between them. So, they concluded that mirtazapine wasn't better than the placebo at improving the appetite of patients with cancer-associated anorexia and cachexia. One of the side effects that was observed in the patients who received the mirtazapine was an increase in sleepiness. Other side effects that have been reported in the literature on mirtazapine include dizziness, dry mouth, and headache. Sleepiness and dizziness coincide with the side effects of Dronabinol and may raise concerns about safety for patients who are prone to falls, choking, and aspiration. At this stage, we've conducted a general overview of appetite stimulants and reviewed the mechanism of action and relevant publications for each of the 3 medications I selected. Now we're going to quickly look at their use in the acute care setting. This was the topic of a 2022 review paper by Steiner et al. After 382 articles were screened, they were only able to find 4 studies that met the inclusion criteria of adult patients who received an appetite stimulant in the inpatient setting. Among those 4 studies was 3 retrospective observational studies and 1 randomized controlled trial. They found Megestrol acetate and mirtazapine may improve appetite, but the use of an appetite stimulant wasn't associated with an increase in body weight, quality of life, or functional status. As such, based on the limited evidence available for efficacy of appetite stimulants in the inpatient setting, they stated that no conclusions can be drawn at this time. They also emphasize that higher quality evidence is needed to determine the role of these medications. In my estimation, one of the major limitations to use in the acute care setting is length of stay. For instance, a retrospective cohort study by Howard et al. Found the patients in their hospital received Megestrol acetate for an average of 2.2 days, Dronabinol for an average of 9.5 days, and mirtazapine for an average of 7.9 days. Although these medications should work quickly to stimulate the appetite, such short-term use is almost certainly insufficient to observe significant changes to body weight and quality of life. Based on everything that's been discussed, here are some key takeaways from this video. For one, there seems to be little support for appetite stimulants in the available literature. I couldn't find any endorsements from professional organizations, and I didn't come across any systematic review or meta-analysis showing they have a meaningful effect on outcomes. This isn't to say that pushing for a patient to receive an appetite stimulant is entirely inappropriate or that they're absolutely ineffective. Instead, it's to suggest they shouldn't be viewed as a cornerstone of treatment, and it's difficult to present them as an evidence-based intervention for anorexia or weight loss. Furthermore, neither Megestrol acetate, Dronabinol, nor mirtazapine appear to be particularly advantageous, and each one has potential risks to consider before they're prescribed. In the end, I see an appetite stimulant as an intervention that may be pursued only after all non-pharmacological strategies to improve appetite have been implemented and shown to be ineffective over multiple weeks. The next video is going to cover non-pharmacological strategies for improving appetite in hospitalized patients. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.